Medical students at the University of Michigan Medical School walked out of a white coat ceremony over the weekend. The ceremony is a traditional event in which medical students essentially introduce themselves to medicine. This year's keynote speaker, though, at their event was Dr. Christian Collier, a U of M assistant professor who is known to hold anti-abortion beliefs. And when she took the podium during the ceremony, watch what happened.
Good afternoon. I'm quite honored to have been chosen as this year's White Coat ceremony speaker. I'd like to extend.
In addition to being a professor, Collier is also the director of the U of M Medical School program on health, spirituality, and religion. She has shared several posts on social media expressing an anti-abortion stance, including messages on Twitter in which she claimed her way of being a feminist involved fighting for her prenatal sisters who have been subjected to what she claims is the violence in the act of abortion. Holding on to a view of feminism where one fights for the rights of all women and girls, especially those who are most vulnerable. I can't not lament the violence directed at my prenatal sisters in the act of abortion done in the name of autonomy, she wrote in May 2022. Over 340 medical students signed a petition opposing the choice of Collier as the event's keynote speaker, according to a report by the Michigan Daily, the student newspaper, together with 72 community members, including University of Michigan medicine's residents, physicians, graduate students, and alumni. Quote, while we support the rights of freedom of speech and religion, an anti-choice speaker as a representative of the University of Michigan undermines the university's position on abortion and supports the non-universal theology-rooted platform to restrict abortion access, an essential part of medical care, the petition reads. But the university reacted to its decision to have Collier as a keynote speaker of this event, telling Newsweek that it could not revoke an invitation to a speaker based on their personal beliefs. This is the second straight week in which a very prominent member of the University of Michigan family has been roiling the university over pro-life stuff. Last week, it was head football coach Jim Harbaugh, who spoke at a Right to Life event in Plymouth, Michigan. Plymouth is not near the Ann Arbor campus, it is off campus. Nonetheless, Harbaugh and his wife raised money for pro-life charities throughout the state. Harbaugh said, quote, I believe in having the courage to let the unborn be born. I love life. I believe in having loving care and respect for life and death. My faith and my science are what drives these beliefs in me. Harbaugh is a devout Catholic. Full disclosure, again, I'm a proud University of Michigan alum. And this one is tough because I believe very strongly in a woman's right to choose. And I believe the freedom of choice represents the best in humanity, represents progress, represents enlightenment, which is what the University of Michigan is supposed to stand for. On the other hand, Jim Harbaugh is not in charge of campus medical services. And this Professor Collier, despite her personal beliefs about abortion, it has not changed University of Michigan policy towards abortion or reproductive services one iota. So I give some credit to my alma mater for trying to foster debate and being inclusive of all points of view. I do believe that university students particularly should be exposed to points of view and opinions that are different from their own. But I also believe very strongly that university students should engage in peaceful protest, which is what they have done at this white coat ceremony for the medical students. And surely there will be some protests in Ann Arbor this fall outside Michigan Stadium by a lot of people who think that Coach Harbaugh should simply stick to football and beating Ohio State if he can manage that, and stay away from the issues of our time that have to do with politics and policies, including abortion. Adrian, your views about where the line is in terms of public, so these are public employees, I guess, I mean, they have every right to their personal views, but they're also ambassadors of a public institution.
Okay, so first of all, having that institution say they couldn't revoke the invite once they had sent it, what they're essentially saying is because it's bad manners. They're trying to stick to this whole decorum ideology that is the same part of the problem, this whole white coat ceremony, this thought that it's unprofessional for you to walk out. What they're trying to do is trying to maintain the status quo. And this is something that we hear from a lot of people in positions of power to try to shame you for doing things that break this sense of what's professional. Because we don't want you talking back. We don't want you speaking back. We don't want you protesting in any way because it upsets decorum. That's how the status quo loves to operate when it comes to serving the oppressed. And so to have the school say we could not pull back the speaker Collier is just incredibly problematic and an absolute lie and excuse. And then on top of that, to have this individual up here giving this speech in some way also just speaks to the ignorance of the moment. The fact is you have so many medical care providers who are now in positions where they cannot put their patients' health first. Their oath is being jeopardized. The things that they stand for, the principles, including pharmacists are going through this as well. They are angry. So having people walk out because the oath that they are going to swear to take or have taken is now being jeopardized in a way where they can't put individuals' health first, that is a damn good reason to protest as far as I'm concerned. And they're lucky that those people simply walked out and did not use their voice or something else to push back.
I agree 100%, and I'm so glad that those students did walk out with their white coats and that there were the 370 people who signed the petition, because I do also have some questions whether the university really couldn't find somebody else at this time to actually deliver this key speech at a white coat ceremony. A white coat ceremony is a big deal. I mean, for people who get into medical school, this is a big event. It's almost like a graduation, although it's not really a graduation, but it's got that same sort of level of prestige. And to try to force, I mean, people who literally are committing their life to believing in science and medicine, and they have to somehow sit there and listen to somebody who's so strongly anti-abortion. And I guarantee that there are going to be some of these students who maybe go into OBGYN or whatever it is. They will find very early in their career where they're gonna deal with somebody, a woman who's pregnant, who's having an ectopic pregnancy, a pregnancy where the uterus, where the what's in their womb is literally not gonna make it. And then the question becomes, okay, well, I suppose you could wait for this naturally to be expelled, but your life might be in danger, or let's go ahead and have a procedure done so it's taken out cleanly. And yet there's state after state that are saying, no, even women whose health and life might be in jeopardy because their pregnancy is not gonna make it because it's a miscarriage. These states are saying to these women, no, you can't get an abortion. And then the doctors are now in a position of having to say, well, wait a second, if the state is gonna restrict me from performing this procedure on women, well, what do I do as a doctor? And so, I mean, Adrian, I've got a friend who's actually on the national board that certifies medical students in procedures like abortions, and it's a real dilemma for this national board because now they're having to deal with trying to decide how do we certify doctors in states where the law says that they can't do this. How do they know that the doctors are going to be able to practice and actually be able to get the training and be able to perform this technique, which will save women's lives?
Yeah, it is a very bad situation to be in, especially because the vast majority of these laws and whatnot, they are not based on science, but pseudoscience and very ignorant understanding of how the body works, and they are regressive. And it's unfortunate because, again, so many people took the oath to preserve life. They're in this game as healthcare providers to ensure that people's health are protected and ensure that life is preserved. And so to take that power away from them and say you have to wait and watch someone suffer and potentially die before you can do something, or you risk losing your ability to be a healthcare provider, a medical provider, that it's incredibly unfair, it's wrong, and it really does reflect how regressive the United States has become.
Agree, very aggressive. And I would say, look, I'm gonna have a lot of friends who are gonna say, Schuster, we know you're a college football fan. We know that you love the University of Michigan. What about Coach Harbaugh? What does this do to the team? The team, as Bo Schembechler famously said way back in the 1970s and 80s. Look Bo Schembechler up if that's a generation that's too old for you. Football is about the team. Football is about not creating distractions for your athletes. Whether you're a professional team, whether you're a college team, whether you're a high school team, you don't want the drama of somebody who's getting arrested, somebody who's saying things out of context, who's criticizing a fellow teammate. So in my view, when people say, well, what about Coach Harbaugh? How has he helped the University of Michigan football team? He has not, he's actually hurt the team, because I guarantee that there are gonna be players in that locker room who either have a girlfriend who's pregnant, or a sister who gets pregnant, or a mother who's got an ectopic pregnancy, whatever it is. And their position on abortion is gonna be, no, this belongs to a woman to decide. And when they look and see that there's their head football coach, a guy who never should cross publicly, is out there publicly defending restrictions on women's rights, to me, that harms the unity you're looking for in a locker room. And I know Jim Harbaugh said, but at halftime, I tell everybody, you're here because you wanna be here and you have to stand by your positions and fight for what you believe in. Well, that's fine, but this is football. A football locker room is not the place to have your political fights. It's not the place to have your fights over issues like abortion, and other social issues of the day. Because then you start to divide your team. And the moment your team is divided, then you start to pile up the losses on the field because the players either don't trust in one another or they don't trust in their coach. So bad move by Jim Harbaugh, just in terms of coaching, regardless of what his views are. And I respect the fact he's Catholic, his views are not new. I get that, and he can hold the views that he wants. But as a football coach, your primary responsibility is to create a team, to create unity. And Jim Harbaugh, I believe, has torn some of this down. And I think the repercussions are actually going to be more severe than a lot of football fans might necessarily imagine. This is not a good sign. And oh, by the way, Coach Harbaugh was troubling enough for a lot of us in only beating Ohio State once in 10 years and losing several years in a row to Michigan State. You're really pushing the button with us now, Coach Harbaugh. Do better. So that's it. Adrian, you have a thought?
It's just, I think it's interesting how people will push their religious principles and views upon you as opposed to not doing that when it's not their job to do that. And so I think that's very interesting how this man is making millions upon millions of dollars, and yet he still feels the need to push on the ideologies that he happens to hold out of his religious beliefs. I think it's really irresponsible and just kind of sad.
I agree. And he was invited to the Right to Life fundraiser because he is the head coach in the University of Michigan, the winningest college football team in US history. It's because he's at the University of Michigan, they wanted him there. So he is using his platform, or the Right to Lifers are leveraging his being at that platform in order to raise money. That's my issue. If Jim Harbaugh were a private citizen, we're not affiliated with the university, fine, do whatever you want. You want to coach the Minnesota Vikings as he wanted to, go for it, knock yourself out and then speak to Right to Life organizations. But when you are hanging yourself up as, I am the head coach of the University of Michigan, to me, that's where actually going and speaking at Right to Life fundraisers is a huge problem and divisive and doesn't represent what this great university should stand for. A university that, by the way, it's such a compelling university, and they got 88,000 applications for 11,000 spots, which is unheard of for a public university. A lot of folks are now describing Harvard as the Michigan of the East. Just something that we used to call it way back when. But anyway, enough promoting the University of Michigan.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.